there, sir. How are you?
Hey, I'm here.
I know. And you know what? It feels really weird to do this now because if anybody's been paying attention, and we do have some people paying attention, this is the first time in like a month where we've been recording with our usual set again. And by set, I mean we're home. And for anybody who may have forgotten, so we did a live, we did two shows actually officially in WLPC in Phoenix. We did the Sunday night recording or Monday night, I think it was Monday night recording, which was our show for that week because we had no other show in the can. And then we did a live stream on Wednesday night, which became our episode for last week. And this is going to be episode 4 tomorrow. But we haven't recorded. It's actually kind of weird not recording right next to you, even though we're side by side on the screen. It's kind of weird. And I laugh because as I was queuing everything up to hit record, the software was still set to do record and stream. So we almost went live unplanned. So this is the danger of not, I mean, you figure we haven't recorded in about 2 weeks. So it's a little, I don't want to say rusty, but it's like a bike. It comes back really fast if you haven't ridden one in a while, but at the same point in time, there's a little bit of rust. So anyway,
well, after our last 2 episodes, I mean, sure, par for the course, I'll be honest with you. I completely forgot about that one that we did in your classroom.
That's true.
Like that was that, as far as I'm concerned, and we'll get into this here in a second. That was like last year. Like that was just like,
it does feel like a while ago. It does.
That was a minute ago. That was a while ago. But yeah, so
honestly, I was looking at, I can't remember if I was looking at the statistics or I was looking at one of the social media posts from the Ruckus Twitter account, and I saw that. I'm like, when did we record that? I'm like, I don't remember. I'm like, oh yeah, that. Because folks, I mean, at the end of the day, the theme of this week's show is going to be life after the conferences, and I say conferences plural. You didn't miss it. There wasn't more than one WLPC, even though it felt like 2 conferences for me because I was there for the entire stretch of it. But Jim actually spent last week in Barcelona doing or handling Mobile World Congress. So we're going to kind of get into life after the conferences. And then we're also going to touch on, I'll mention it now, but we'll touch on it a little bit later. Right at the end of Mobile Wireless LAN Professionals Conference, literally the Friday everybody was going home, AFC became a thing. So that's a really big a deal that we've been waiting years for, effectively, depending on how you want to put it, but years officially. So we finally have that. I think it's provisionally or conditionally approved. So it's basically a thing, but I guess there's always that, government or regulatory statement that says it could always kind of change on a dime again. But for right now, AFC is a thing. Yeah, we'll get into that. So,
yeah.
So it's been a while since we've actually recorded at home, which is kind of crazy because I'm like, wait a minute, I've got my camera, I've got lights. So I apologize to everybody that saw us while we were in WLPC, or you watched the video of when we were in Phoenix and the lighting was atrocious. The lighting on the live stream was really bad. Jim and I were actually just talking about this before. I apologize, but it's one of those things where we had this great idea, and full disclosure, we cooked this up. I feel like we've been cooking this up since like October of last year. Like we were debating if we were going to do the vendor event, and then we're like, well, I don't know, like not to get into all the nitty gritty stuff because everybody doesn't need to know it, but we were like, what if we do a live show? And we're like, it's really, really great. And honestly, so just setting the table right, I taught a deep dive and a boot camp. You taught a boot camp, a deep dive. We had the party deal that was going on. And just everything going on, everything was, and you were talking, that's a big deal. You were still working on your presentation in the middle of the week. And I think the thing that we were most panicked about after we really got into it was the live stream.
Yeah, but let's back up a little bit.
Sure.
And because some people might have missed all the weird recordings we did in the live stream and stuff like that.
Every recording we do is weird. Let's be honest.
Yeah. Touche. You got me. So let's talk about your boot camp. How'd the boot camp go?
The boot camp was good. The boot camp was good.
RCWA boot camp.
Yeah, it was good. That was
Saturday, Sunday, Monday.
Mm-hmm. We had
I crashed it.
We did have a guest instructor for. You didn't come in as much on Sunday as I initially had thought you would, based on last year's schedule. But I think you were a little bit busier with stuff on Sunday, which is fine.
Yeah.
you came in and made up for it on Monday. The class enjoyed having you, as far as I could tell. Everybody was pretty happy to hear from you. And I spent all of Saturday and Sunday like teeing and stuff up. I'm like, trust me, Jim will have his own thoughts on that. We'll wait till he's in, and so we kind of had some stuff queued up. But no, we had a good group of. We had one customer, and the rest of the class was partners. They were happy to have it. It was sort of a unique class this time. We had. I had my deck from last year that was all prepped and cleaned and ready to go. And I had a couple things that I missed from fixing. It just happens. But I think the day or two before, the brand new RCWA version 2 came out. So there's a new test, there's a new exam. The requirements or the what's covered is a little bit different. And had basically flew to Phoenix, having just barely gotten my hands on the new deck myself. Did not adapt it for the class, but did teach to the new stuff. And I actually, while I'm saying it, I actually did take the test myself about a month ago at this point, and I passed. So I'm being lazy. I'm not going to hit the sound effects, but it was actually nice to have taken the new the new test to be able to speak to it. No, I didn't give any answers away, but it was nice to be able to have that information, if you will, the experience to be able to impart on the students that say, like, it's realistically something you could expect to see on the exam or not. Like, this is something you need to know. This is something that you want to know because and they got really good at it. They were like, oh, that could be an exam question. I'm like, I'm not going to tell you. I'm not doing dumps or anything like that. But no, it was a good class. They were very, very in tune. I'm looking forward to hearing, hopefully, from some of them that take the exam and pass. But no, it was a good class, and I'm looking forward to doing it again. I would love to be able to teach it at another WLPC, perhaps Prague, if we've got the appetite from the European folks. I don't know that we've got the market or the interest, and I certainly cannot speak Spanish, so I'm not sure if the other WLPC offerings are in the cards, but Prague, if not, and hopefully Phoenix the next year. But it was good.
Yeah. And then, let's see, then the conference started Tuesday with registration.
Well, registration was Monday, but we're trying to forget that.
Wait. Oh, yeah. That was, man, that was much harder than. So, full disclosure, John and I were assigned to, or not assigned, I guess. Well, John volunteered. I was voluntold.
No, we were both voluntold.
Oh, okay. Thank you, one person who will remain nameless. But it was the 10th anniversary of the first WLPC, and so the registration was probably much more chaotic and much bigger and much crazier than anyone that I've ever been to. And so that was sort of an experience that I'm kind of glad it's probably over with, because that was kind of crazy.
I'm happy to be able to help out. I'm happy that we're both seen as people that have been to enough of these and are mature enough to do something like that. But I definitely, and you said it during the live stream, and you said it a few times to me in private. You almost kind of want to go back to being just an attendee, where you've got no responsibility. Like, I mean, I remember 2017, my first WLPC. I showed up. I got my badge for my boot camp, and I kind of I lingered for a couple minutes, and then I went back to my room, and that was it. And then I was just in my room on a Friday night, and then I came out of my boot camp. I got my bag. I think I mingled for a couple minutes because I didn't know anybody, and I really was more of an introvert at that point. And I went back to my room. Like, there's a theme here. And since then, like, every registration, I don't like. I think last year, I think I wound up. Cheryl Connell was out for a boot camp as well, and she and I wound up talking till like 9 o'clock at night. Just, everybody's leaving. The bars are closing. The pop-ups they had, and the same thing happens on Monday night, right? The food trucks close. You're like, oh wait, I didn't even eat, and that's sort of how it goes. It's great conversation. I wound up talking to. We had a couple of my customers were out there. You catch up with people you haven't talked to in a while, and it's a really good experience. Not a complaint at all, but it's definitely one of those where you go, there's how the other half lives, right? Like, you miss that to an extent. Like, it's just kind of, no, it was good.
I think one of the things we need to get better at is learning we just have to order food in because this is now the third year in a row that I have not eaten dinner on registration night.
Well, see, I just do Uber Eats late, and I had to do it a couple times. Literally, and I mean, I'm getting ahead of myself, but the last night of the conference, I was literally sitting there talking to a wireless engineer from Apple, and we were just talking. We weren't talking Wi-Fi at that point. We were talking cars, to be honest. And I'm like, all right, it's getting late. I'm getting hungry. I'm getting hangry. I've got to pack. I literally ordered, like, while I'm sitting there, I'm like, I'm not being rude. I'm ordering food. And I said, when it's about to be here, I'm going up and getting it. So, whatever. But so no, it's a whirlwind week. Like I said, you forgot we even recorded. So
I think we'll talk about our deep dives. Let's do deep dives real quick.
Sure.
Mine went pretty well. I mean, I had a good turnout. We had good discussions. Good now, and I think I might backtrack a little bit because I said that I was actually going to. This was the last one, and I was just going to retire it. I think I'm just going to put it on hiatus and see what happens over the next 12 months and see because Fernay Munoz and I have come up with an idea, and I might be teaching it again in a different one, just because turns out we have some extra gear. So we're gonna work on that. We're gonna see how that plays out for us. But so it was very much a relaxed thing, and I think we had a good time, and everybody seemed to enjoy it, and so that was good. Your deep dive, the first time doing it, I've been there, I've done that. It's you get done like the first time I taught my antenna one. I got done and I was like, wow, day 2 was about as bad as it could ever possibly go. And so it was like, I basically rebuilt my entire day 2 after the first time I taught it, because what you think is going to happen and what you think it works when you do the practice runs and the dry runs, especially with the conference organizers, they're just like, oh yeah. And then you get into class and you're like, wow, this did not go any way the way I thought it was. And so, I get it.
Yeah, it was. I mean, you know this all too well because full disclosure. I mean, we've talked about this up on the months leading up to this. I mean, Jim and I give a ton of credit to Jim. I give a ton of credit to Jim and the lab guide as well. You did a lot. I mean, we've been working on this for 2 years. I mean, literally like nights and weekends, we'll be pinging each other like ideas, throwing stuff in Google Docs and kind of cooking it up. And it finally ran.
Maybe 2 years next month. So we're just short of 2 years on this one.
But like, I mean, it was a mix of like excitement, sheer terror, and and it just we had some issues going into it that we hadn't quite worked out, and finally got worked out in like literally like the last month before.
No, there was one issue we didn't get worked out until like less than a week before the conference.
No, the DHCP one I got worked out like it was like 2 weeks. We had a little bit of time, but then
it was the VLAN tagging on the ports.
Okay. And then that
was like literally like the Sunday or Monday before. And you flew on Friday. And we didn't get that worked out until like Sunday, and you were teaching it on Tuesday. So we were like way behind.
But so we had like a DHCP issue that wasn't quite squared away. I didn't figure out the PoE issue until like the Monday before. Honestly, figured that out through an Amazon review of all things. I mean, there's just a lot of learning, and I mean, literally, one of my biggest problems that hit me on the day 2 of the class when we were going through the exercises was one of those where I couldn't have actually, unless I had like 8 lab kits with me, I couldn't have done it at home. It would have never hit me on scale, and I actually, I had to. I mentioned that to Keith Parsons, who was interested in taking my class, did not get to do my dry run due to weather issues, but I said the one major issue I had on Wednesday, you won't see at home if you're doing this as a solo run because you're not dealing with all the other lab kits. So there's definitely notes that I took that I've got to fix up. Day 2 was a blur. It wrapped a little too fast. In general, it worked out okay given what we were dealing with on Wednesday night. So I didn't really hate that I had an hour like free. I actually stayed a little bit. I mean, I almost stayed the entire 6 hours because we gave the class an R350, and so apparently the downloads and whatnot, the network is never great there. I wound up I actually wound up flashing most of the R350s to Unleashed before they went home, so they wouldn't have to do it later. And because not even that. That one wasn't even a network thing. That one was the PoE requirement. I had a PoE brick for the MikroTik that we used that they did not have because I didn't realize that it needed a different brick until Monday. So, but it worked out well. Everybody was happy. I got a lot of good feedback so far. So,
you did have two 24-port PoE switches in the room you could have used for that.
Well, so yes, but that was the idea, Jim, was this was a lab in a box, self-contained, did not need the PoE switches. But at that point, then they've got to, so the problem then would have been like, well, which one is your R350? Because you're going to remote to 10.10. Whatever. And so it would have been a train wreck. But
it's one of those things that you don't think about till you have to do it at scale.
Yes. Well, exactly. That's, lessons learned.
And until you experience it, that's one of the things that's great about doing the deep dives is, a lot of times we get, if you're not doing it every day, if you're not a customer, if you're not somebody who runs networks every day, sometimes you forget what it means to try to get all of this stuff up and running at one time. And so it's really nice to do this every once in a while because it gets your feet back into, doing things at scale. It's one thing to do it in your lab. It's one thing to do it at your house, but it's another thing when you throw, 16 routers into a room.
Yeah. Some of the things that one of the things I didn't even think about, and I think you probably, I don't know if it impacts you as much with yours, but one of the things you probably would be like, well, duh. I had a couple people in my class that were just like, just ripped right through it. Like literally I had a student that finished the entire lab deck on Tuesday and then left and didn't come back on Wednesday. And I was like, all right, well, I guess somebody's getting a free lab kit and an R350. Turns out he had a guy in the class that was from the same company and he collected his stuff for him, which was nice. But I get it. We've all been in deep dives where you don't have enough or you're smart enough or you just took it for the gear, whatever, and you can get through most of it on one day. I've literally been in a deep dive where I didn't finish it because it was not what I expected, and I wound up sitting in yours. No judgment. It's just and I told the class from the get-go. And I wasn't trying to scare them or turn them off or anything. I flat out admitted mine was this is a back to basics kind of deep dive. It assumes you know nothing about this work. So, but at the same point in time, there were a couple of people that had worked with the stuff before that had other experiences. One of the guys, Jamie, was in my class, Jamie Jackson, and he'd clearly worked on MikroTik before from past lives. And he liked it. He was happy with the class. He stayed through both days. And it was funny because at one point he was like, well, don't forget about this. And I'm like, dude, you're killing me. That's like lab 12. And he laughed, but it was all good fun. And so I got good feedback, and there's definitely, it's one of those where I could see how it'll evolve like yours has. And like you said, you were retiring it until about a week ago, and now you're not. So,
well, I had people come up to me on the last day and they're like, man, I came to WLPC simply to take your class. And I'm like, dude, now you tell me. I'm like, no. So it's like,
that's the hope.
It is. And so, but but back to your point, last year I had somebody to take my class and I literally told them when they walked in on day one, I was like, dude, why are you here? And this is somebody that actually had taught a deep dive a few years ago, not on this topic, but something very similar. And so I'm like, dude, I said, this is not the class. And he's like, you know what? He goes, I just wanted to come and hang out. And he goes and just play around. And, I had some other people in the class and they were same thing. They just wanted to come and hang out with other people. And yeah, they might show up late. They might leave early, but you know what? For the most part, they know what they're getting into. And so I've learned to not worry about that anymore, because WLPC is not so much about, the topics or the instructions. It is, but at the same time, it's also about forming those relationships and hanging out with people and doing stuff like that. And so I'm hoping that as we go forward with WLPC, one of the things I'd really like to see is more focused on sort of the people and less about what crazy thing did I come up with that is going to increase my stature or my cachet within the community, and just more like, hey, you know what? These are cool things I've been working on, and I just wanted to share. Whether or not it means that I get more Twitter followers or more recognition on other social media sites, I really kind of hope we can get back to that. And so, you know, it is what it is. So we'll see how things go forward. But
I mean,
this year we still have 2 more C's to cover, and we've spent.
Yeah, well, WLPC was the only one we were both at, so
well, yeah.
I'll close my whole boot camp, my deep dive thing with just one last thing. The biggest thing for us was your leadership was gracious enough to get us the R350s. I did a quick poll, unscientific, didn't take any measurements, but I think about half the class probably took it because there was an R350 involved, which is funny, and I'm happy that we were able to sweeten the pot. But the cool thing was that was people that took the class because they wanted the free AP, because geeks at conferences like free stuff. But it was a way for us to get, I mean, I guarantee some of those people had never touched a Ruckus AP before, and they all went home with one, which was, if nothing else, like if my class was a complete train wreck, they got a running R350 to take home with them. So I think that was pretty cool. And like I said, I hope to teach it again. We'll see.
Yeah, and that was the whole point of it, was to try to, I guess, impress upon people that you don't need a 19-inch rack mount device or a giant, 2-kilogram AP to be able to get really good stuff out of it. And so it was this idea that, hey, you know what? It's what's the saying? And you're going to crucify me. It's not the size of the dog in the fight; it's the size of the fight in the dog, or something like that.
Yeah, I wouldn't crucify for it, but it's fair. So after we finished our boot camps, or I'm sorry, deep dives, I will conflate those two for forever.
You will.
But we both ran, quite literally, from our classes to our live stream.
Mm-hmm.
And I know the people in the room enjoyed it. I know the people at home, the audio had some issues. I cleaned that up. So that was last week's episode. As I told Jim, I learned the hard way that you can't hook certain things up to a hub and then to your computer, and there's no warnings about it. Everything looked fine. First time trying that in that particular configuration. Lessons learned for next time. And yes, as I was sitting in the airport waiting to go home on Thursday, I was writing those notes. So if ever we're graced with the ability to do it again, hopefully we don't repeat a lot of those same mistakes. But it was fun.
Yep. Yeah, it was a good time. It's always fun, nice to meet with people and have the conversations and stuff, because, I mean, like I said, the presentations are recorded, and the daytime presentations are recorded. They're now on YouTube, so we should probably link to my presentation. There's also they did some spotlights. I haven't had a chance to look because of the second C that we're going to get here in the last couple of minutes.
Nice segue. But we do have a couple of other Ruckus people that were there that did talk, and we'll add those links in the description as well.
They did some spotlight sessions, so I need to go watch those. But you go because of the people, you go because of the relationships, and that's.
So I was going to say, you were speaking of the other C, in the interest of time. So where were you last week? You went to the beach, didn't you?
It's funny.
You could see the ocean from your room, I know.
I could kind of see it, but I learned at the very last day that if I were to walk out of my hotel room and make a left and go like 2 rooms down to the end of the hallway, I could see the Mediterranean much better than I could from my room. And so I was kind of joking with somebody. I said I saw the Mediterranean like 3 times. Once when we flew in, once when we flew out, and then once from the end of my hallway. But I never actually made it. Because I went to Mobile World Congress in Barcelona. So I ended up leaving right after WLPC. Like I was home long enough to like dump everything out into my office. So it's just this disaster. I dumped it all out, did some laundry, threw a whole bunch of stuff back into a bag. It was close. Threw a whole bunch of stuff back into a bag. And then I set off for Barcelona and went to Mobile World Congress, which, I thought I'd been to some big conferences.
Yeah, the amount of people I've seen on like LinkedIn and Twitter that were there, and just seeing some of the pictures, it's just crazy.
Well, to give you an idea, there was a vendor, not us, who had 750 people working their booth.
That's bigger than some vendors. Like, did they leave anybody home?
I mean, I suspect somebody had to be, but yeah, they had.
Wow, that's a lot.
They had 750 people working at their booth.
That's crazy.
I mean, that's insane. I think they said there was like 85 to 88,000 attendees.
That's nuts.
And so I got to meet a lot of people. And that was again, I can talk to you about our solutions. We've done it on here. We've done it on a couple of different things, and that's one thing, and that's fine and dandy. But it's in these conferences, it's all about that face-to-face meetup. I'm already talking with somebody who used to be a Ruckus partner, and now after having these discussions, they want to come back. They want to. I was able to explain things and answer questions for them, and my voice is shot, which is why I'm actually working on a cough drop right now after I ran out of my coffee. So it was like being able to explain things and answer those questions face to face, and is, I think, something that might have been lost. A few years ago around this idea we can do everything over Zoom. You're never truly engaged when you're on Zoom. I'm writing notes, I'm working on my cough drop, I'm not paying attention to you, stuff like that. And I think, and so getting back to that face to face, I was able to meet a lot of people and help them sort of understand and explain. I met a guy who's a student at a university in Europe, and dude, guy came to the booth 3 different times to talk about Wi-Fi, and it was talk about Ruckus, it was talk about that, but he wanted to just talk about Wi-Fi, and he wanted to learn. And so it's stuff like that really sort of, not only is it about the brand, it's also about, our knowledge and how Wi-Fi works, and being able to share that with people, whether or not they buy our products, which you should, because they're awesome and we'd appreciate it. But at the same time, it's also about, making sure that people learn, people understand, people grow. And so there's that aspect to the conferences that really makes it interesting. So while, there was a ton of people and I barely met, a fraction of them, it was still fun to meet people and talk to people. But I will tell you what, on the last morning, it was like 6-point-something miles from the hotel to the venue. It took us 90 minutes on the bus.
Wow.
Yeah, you want to talk, like, look, from a dude who grew up in like the mountain west of the United States where traffic isn't a thing, taking 90 minutes to get 6 miles.
Sounds like you were in New York.
I don't even know if New York's that bad. I mean, it
can be.
It was pretty bad, but it was fun. I think we had a really good turnout. We had, I brought the award for the R770. We had that. Had a lot of interest, a lot of people talking. It was a very, very busy time, and the booth starts at like 9 a.m. and so you have to be there early, and it goes until 7 p.m. And then you have to walk the 20 minutes back to the bus, ride the 45 minutes back to the hotel, and then you're trying to get dinner like 8:30, 9 o'clock. And so 2 weeks of that back to back. I'm a little behind, John.
I can imagine. I mean, so, I had a couple of people talk to me over the weekend about, like, are you recovered from WLPC yet? And I'm like, no. I joked with you this morning. Like, I'm fortunate enough that, like, I have a desk mic and stuff like that, but, like, I brought the camera with me. I hadn't plugged it in and turned it on and used it until this morning to make sure we were ready for today. I hadn't fiddled with a lot of the stuff since Phoenix, just because I hadn't had to, because I knew you were out, and just I could get by with normal work without it. But yeah, it's just you're still getting back into the routine. It takes a lot, but I mean, at the end of the day, I want to stress to any bosses that are listening about sending people to these events. Yes, you're away from the office, but there's a ton of work. I mean, there's still contacts that I had, conversations that I've had that I haven't even been able to fully like internalize them in terms of like next steps to getting them into like a sales opportunity, because I'm an SE.
Yeah.
but they're like legitimately had these conversations back in Phoenix and have been going back and forth with the customer that it's not a conference where you're going and you're having a party. And I mean, I'm not saying we're not having fun. We had a blast, but there was a lot of work going on. So it was good.
Yeah.
So one thing before we jump into the last C, because you touched on it, and we didn't open with it, and I apologize to our listeners. We really probably should have, but we didn't really do anything about it at the live stream because it was just a blur. But we did happen to win 2 awards 2 weeks ago from the Wi-Fi Awards. Mm-hmm. And we have to thank the listeners because at the end of the day, they're both,
yes.
They were, I don't know, even fan votes, whatever you want to call it. It was voted on by our peers in the community, fans, listeners, et cetera, and so forth. And so for me, for Jim, the R770 winning was pretty cool. That was Innovation of the Year from the Wi-Fi Awards. But not being selfish, but I mean, the one that means a lot to me personally, because it was for the show, it was for what we did, was Content mm-hmm. Creator of the Year. So I wanted to thank everybody. We didn't miss you. We didn't forget. It's just, I mean, it's been 2 weeks. So, my memory's not what it was. And we didn't bring it up really on the live stream because it was just a blur. But I do want to thank everybody. That was awesome. And hey, why not? Let's try and defend it. 2025 repeat. I don't know. Maybe. I don't know if that's even a thing, but whatever. Well, that's next year's problem.
Thank you to all our listeners. I guess if I was thinking, I would have grabbed mine because it's sitting. It's actually right off my camera. You can't see it, but thank you for voting. Thank you for hanging with us through all the learning, and your learning as well as our learning. And I only see bigger and better things. Yep, there you go. There's the award. And I have to say that, this is being kind of selfish, but the podcast stickers were one of the biggest items at the booth at Mobile World Congress. So hopefully we're going to expand our reach into other countries, somewhere like Estonia. So shout out to all my new Estonian friends who are hopefully listening to this. And they gave me an idea that we're going to have to do. So I got to figure out how we're going to do it.
We talked about that a little bit, so that'll be fun.
That was Carl.
But so
I forgot Carl. I got Carl's name somewhere, but
there you go.
And I'm not. It's his name. It's Carl. Carl's really smart.
So and pivoting, I think we're mm-hmm. kind of we beat that up good. And again, thank you. There is one last C, and there's one last C we have to talk about before we send this one home.
Yep.
AFC, Mr. Palmer. What do you think?
So that actually came out
Friday. Yep. Friday morning.
I got to look at a calendar.
I feel like it got lost in the shuffle of the AT&T outage.
It kind of did, but it was Friday, February 23rd. It was officially announced that AFC, there's now 7 AFC providers. I put a link on social media about, linking to that from, at least in the United States, which is good. I mean, we needed that step. We needed that final push. We had Mark Gibson on 2 months ago. He talked about it, and he said that it was imminent. And so he was right. I have to give Coleman a little grief because he was talking about it on like Thursday at the conference, and he's like, it's imminent, and he's like, it's coming. And I was like, when I saw it on Friday, I was like, Coleman knew, he just couldn't say.
Probably.
So which is fair. That's fine. But I like David Coleman, so I'm just going to give him grief. But one thing that it was super interesting being at Mobile World Congress because it is worldwide. I mean, you think WLPC this thing is worldwide. And I had a lot of conversations with people about that, but it all still came back to like the presentation I did Thursday, which would have been on the 22nd. And it had to do with a chart that Fernay Munoz put together that I asked him if I could use in my presentation about, well, but where is 6 gigahertz allowed in different regions, different countries? And the problem you have is if you aren't allocated the full 1200 megahertz of spectrum, it's like you're running it at a reduced, capacity, if you will. And then just because the USA has it doesn't mean that like in Europe, ETSI, as far as I know, there is not much conversation about, doing standard power and ETSI right now. And so you think you're jonesing for it here in the States. Other countries, other regions are just like, we haven't even started that conversation yet about doing that. And so I think one of the things that now brings into focus is something that came up in Prague in October, so 5 months ago, when I did my presentation about standard power. And somebody in the audience was like, well, what about very low power? And I'm like, I'm still trying to wrap my mind around the LPI and standard power. Now you're going to throw in this third power one down here, so it's like, there's still so much that we don't know. There's still so much that we're unsure of. That it's cool. It's nice. The other thing that came out last week is solved the problem that all the Ruckus SEs are getting trained on right now by a video that I did before all this came out. There's a planning tool that actually incorporated an AFC call and response into the planning tool. So you can, and that was announced 2 weeks ago at WLPC, that they've now in the planning tools, you can say, hey, you know what? I'm going to put an outdoor AP here. It does an AFC call. It gets the AFC response. It comes back and it says, this is what you can expect. So at least now we can kind of plan for it. But it's still that whole thing of, it's the trust but verify. It's still there. So while it's cool, while I'm happy that we have it, and now it allows us to sort of keep moving forward, we still have to move forward with the idea that, it's not everywhere. Sometimes we forget that, in the States, we're not, we're just one little tiny, but in the grand scheme of the numbers thing, we're just a small portion of the community. We're a small portion of the industry, and we still have all these other, guidelines and all these other things that are still into work with 6 gigahertz. So we still have a lot more work to do. I said it in one of my videos, it's just simple math at this point. 6 gigahertz was officially, was even possible in 2020. APs didn't really start shipping until the end of 2021, beginning of 2022. And then that was like the first AP across the board that you could get with 6 gigahertz was in the beginning of 2022. And so we literally have just at 2 years for the entire industry to learn what 6 gigahertz means in the wild, what 6 gigahertz means in our networks. And so while I feel like it's a great step forward, it's a great advancement that's going to help us as we move forward. We have 25 years of 5 gigahertz since 802.11a came out. We have 25 years of experience to learn about how 5 gigahertz works. And there's still so much that we don't know about 6 gigahertz. So this isn't the end of the road. This is just simply allowing us to, it's like almost like taking the governor off the car. It's like we've been kind of driving around with our car with the governor on going, yeah, we can do 20 miles an hour, or 40 kilometers per hour. And now it's like, now we're going to start to get up to highway speeds, but we still don't know really how this is going to perform. It's one thing to run it on a track. It's one thing to run it in a lab, but when you put it out into the wild and you go, hey, I'm going to go drive it in rush hour traffic in New York City or in Barcelona, or how does it perform? And so I think, while cool, while great, it's just now one additional thing that we have to try to learn about and keep up to date. And so again, it's cool, it's great, it's fun, but it's not the end of the road by any stretch of the imagination.
Yeah, and you said it, and I was kind of thinking about it as you were talking about it, and I'm like, it's here, so now what? And the now what is kind of the great unknown. You kind of put it really, really well. We've been waiting for it for so many years now. It's been talked about. It's been known that we needed it. And now that we finally have it, it's sort of the floodgates are open, and we're not really sure what's going to happen. It'll be interesting to see. I think the overseas adoption of it, or lack of adoption of it, is going to be really a big thing for the foreseeable future, because for 2 reasons. One, we've got a lot of smart people that are overseas that will have a lot of interesting things to say and do with it. But until they legally can, it'll be nice to be on the same plane again. We can all look back, even going back to 2.4, right? Like, we don't all have the same channels available to us, but we kind of worked through that, and we've got a lot of history there. So 6 gigahertz is still the wild, wild west. It'll be very, very interesting to see. Stay tuned. I'm sure we'll have Mr. Gibson back on. We'll have some other guests in the future talking about, what is coming for us with Wi-Fi 7 because that's all tying together. But yeah, we'll see. So I know we're kind of up against the top of our hour. I don't have anything else to add, Mr. Palmer. What about you? Any closing thoughts?
No, just again, you go to conferences because it's about the people. It's about having those conversations, whether it's about Wi-Fi or cars or anything else. I met a lot of interesting people at WLPC and at MWC, and so that's why I think people are now starting to realize it's like that's the value of these events. It's not, the classes are great, the presentations are great, but it's more about, having those face-to-face conversations and discussing and saying, hey, what is your problem? What is this thing that you're trying to solve? And that was something that I found myself saying more and more and more last week was, people would ask me, they're like, well, are you just in the cloud? Are you just, and I had to, I said this again more than one time. I'm like, Ruckus is a, purpose-driven solution type of thing. And it's like, what is it that you need? Like I was having a conversation with a partner and they were like, and it was like, yeah. And it just felt like Ruckus 1, Ruckus 1, Ruckus 1, Ruckus 1. And then all of a sudden they dropped this one little comment. And they were like, oh yeah. And this, and I went, ooh, I'm like, that now changes the conversation. I was like, so now we need to sit down and have a bigger discussion. And I did not say, well, I did say it depends, but I was like, it depends based on what you're going to say and how you're going to answer my next questions. And so there's a lot of value in that. And so again, who knows what it's going to hold, but I've left these two conferences with, like you said, so many thoughts running through my head and so many, it's like, where do we go from here? How do we actually take all that and distill it down? Because it's not, the discussions, the presentations are good, but it's all about meeting with people and solving their problems in a way that works best for them. And so, we'll see how the rest of the year goes, but I think I'm going to be recovering from this one for a while.
Yeah, I was going to say, it should take you at least a week or two, but we'll see.
We'll see.
All righty, sir. We will, thanks for listening. We'll catch you guys on the next one.
Yep. See you guys later.
If you want to contact the show directly, you can email us using the address ruckcast@comscope.com. To learn more about Ruckus products and services that we may have talked about on this or any other podcast, please check the links in the About section of the show.